We are going to get started. Thank you, everyone, for being here and welcome. This is Pro Power Hour, and we have the lovely Andrea with us here today. She is from the onboarding team. Do you want to give a quick intro and how long you've been with Housecall Pro, what you do?
Sure. So like Shayna said, I'm Andrea. I've been with Housecall Pro almost 3 years, and I have a little bit of a unique background as far as being a dispatcher with a large heating, plumbing, and electric company here in Denver before I came to Housecall Pro. So I know a little bit about both sides of things. So it gives me a little edge up on things when helping you guys out. And I love what I do over in onboarding because I think it's like putting a puzzle together. We all get the same pieces, but our picture looks the same in the end, or different in the end. Sorry. So yeah.
That's awesome. So Andrea deals with training and teaching people how to use Housecall Pro every single day. She does it professionally. So today, Andrea is going to teach us about card on file and how card on file works, what it does, what it doesn't do, and the difference between card on file and your card that you have saved for your service plan payments.
Right. So
Do you have the deck or do you want me to share it?
no, I'm good.
Okay, awesome.
We'll go ahead and share here. So, all righty. So like Shayna said, we're going to talk about card on file today because card on file is a great way to ensure that you're getting paid and you don't have to chase people to get those payments. So with card on file, you can streamline payments by saving the card to the customer's profile, and you can collect that information by either getting it over the phone when you're taking the customer's information in, or you can send a link to the customer to collect that information. And I would suggest sending the link to the customer to collect the information from the job, because one of the early on questions we had before jumping in here today was, can we see if that email gets delivered to the customer? And you can only see that if you send the credit card on file link from the job. So you also want to make sure that you have your SMS or texting feature set up in Housecall Pro, because that way you can send that request through email or text message now. And then we have some common questions. So does a customer receive a receipt? Yes. So when the card is on file on the customer's profile, they will automatically get a receipt when you charge that card. Now, there was also a question about automatic payments that we'll talk about in a little bit, but the card on file, if you do not have auto payments turned on in your settings, you are going to typically have a conversation with that customer, ask them, talk to them about the charges, and then click that pay button and use the card on file. And we'll look at a demo here in a minute. But sending that automatic receipt after you collect that payment helps decrease the possibility of chargebacks, because the customer is getting notified of the charges so that they recognize them. And then the card on file can be updated. The card holder, so your customer, can use the link on their receipt to update that card on file, or you can do that from the customer's profile. So when we go through the demo, you'll see where there's 3 little dots that you can click on to remove the current card and add a new card. And then once that card is updated, it is automatically the card that's going to be used for future jobs. So with that, we will switch screens here. And I am going to share our demo. So let's see here. All right, so I'm going to use this demo first because on my test account, I don't have my bank connected. But when we're talking about collecting the card on file, in the customer's profile, you have the add card, which is going to be the verbal that you take it over the phone with the customer, or request card on file. Again, you can send that request from here, but I'm going to suggest sending it once you have the job scheduled or created, so that you can track if that email has been delivered and received. And then when you send it to the customer, this is what they're going to see. So they see that you're requesting the card on file for charges. They're going to put in their information. It's going to let them know that they're authorizing you to charge the card on file. And then they're going to save that information and they're going to get a confirmation. So once that card is on file, right, you have those three dots here just to the right-hand side of the payment method that are going to allow you to make changes. If you need to remove that card or update it, you can click there. And on the job, we're going to see that card on file here in that left-hand panel under the customer's address. So we know that there's a card on file. And when you're ready to charge the card and collect that payment, you're going to go ahead and click that pay button. From here, you'll have the option to use the card on file, or you can add a different credit card, and then we would go ahead and charge that card. So with that, this should open up to my test account. Beautiful. So a couple of questions that were asked before we jumped in, and then we'll head on over to any questions that we have here. Is there any way to auto pay the invoice for the customer? And that question is yes. So when you go up to your settings in the top right corner, and then you're going to go to invoices on your left-hand panel here. And when you click on invoices, you have automations. And under automations, let's look at configuration. I always get confused since they just switched this, and you guys have probably noticed that as well. So it is automations. Automatic payment, sorry, right at the bottom. So if you have your bank connected, this automatic payments will have a toggle to turn on. And if you turn this on, it will charge the customer's card. When you click finish on the job, it's going to then auto charge for that. And you're not going to have to click the pay button. This will also have an exclusions feature, just like your reminders up at the top. So up here where it says exclude customers from invoice reminders, you're going to have a very similar feature in the automatic payments. So if the majority of your customers are auto pay, I would turn this on and then just add in the ones that you want to exclude from auto pay.
Like if you have a commercial client, then they're like, net 30, net 60.
Right. Yeah. And typically a lot of them are check payment anyway. So you're not going to have card on file, but yeah, exactly. You can also exclude by tag. So that will make that process a lot faster for you if you're excluding by commercial versus residential and things like that. The other question was, when putting their card on file, is there an authorization to charge for future, or do you call each time? I think it's best to call the customer if you're not using auto pay, so that you are confirming what you did when you went out to do the work and confirming the charge and then using that card on file. But again, that's going to depend on the conversation you had with your customer in the very beginning. If someone's out of the country or unreachable, if you send them that link, as we saw in the demo, to put in their information, they are seeing all that information, that they're agreeing that that card on file is going to be used for future jobs. So again, I would send the link instead of just verbally intaking it. And then I would also add in your terms and conditions, right? So most of you probably already have terms and conditions built out at the bottom of your profile page. But if you're using card on file and or you're using auto pay, I would make sure those two things are also added into your terms and conditions, so that anything in, around, or surrounding it is clearly in your terms and conditions. So you have it in more than one place for them. And then let's see.
I love that you just dropped that golden nugget, Andrea, because that is so important. It's not always obvious that you need to do something like that, but CYA, make sure that you're sending it if you can, so that the customer is uploading the card on file. This is just like from experience business advice. You don't have to do that.
Right.
And then put it in your terms and conditions so that they're not going to just go dispute that charge and be um say that they didn't know that you were gonna charge their card.
Yep, exactly. The more places it is, the like Shayna said, CYA, right?
Yeah.
We all know it happens and we've all been on the other end of one of those calls. Um, so the other one is very closely related to this. Somebody asked what, and it was phrased like, what are you, the rest of you in the pro community doing to save multiple cards on an account? And in order to remain PCI compliant, you don't want to store a card in the customer notes or anything like that. That's setting yourself up for disaster. But if you do have a customer that maybe has multiple addresses, multiple locations, and they want multiple cards saved on file, I would create a separate profile for each one, and you could tag them and identify them so you can recognize that card, or something like that. But that would be the only way that you're going to be able to save multiple cards on file, is by creating
Mhm.
multiple profiles. And then there was another one that we came across yesterday, and it was actually in the questions about how you collect a deposit payment on a job on mobile. And interestingly enough, that has nothing to do with the card being on file, but the person who asked the question had kind of tied that in. You don't have to have card on file, but if you turn on progress payments, you lose the ability on mobile to collect a deposit payment, because
Oh wow.
progress payments, typically, if you think about it, progress payments are typically set up by the office to invoice, during those different phases of work. So it
Right.
takes that ability away from the technician to just request a, 25% or whatever that is. So
Mm.
if you're someone who has turned on progress payments and you're wondering where your deposits went, that is where it went. So you would want the office to add that deposit to the job and then send the invoice so the customer can pay.
So that's a really good call out. And I've come across pros that are using progress invoicing, and they are only doing that to collect a deposit, and then they're not using true progress invoicing. So you do not need to turn on progress invoicing in order to just collect a deposit and then collect payment at the end.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. And it's interesting because so many people wanted progress invoicing for the longest time. And now what we're learning in onboarding as we go through is sometimes segments make more sense. So
Yeah.
we can
Yes.
use them both happily in unison. So, all right. Do we have any other questions that?
So we do have a question from Sonia. Is there a way to set up automatic monthly invoices? I am in landscaping and have monthly maintenance clients and would like to set up recurring monthly landscape maintenance invoices.
So the answer is yes, kind of, because it depends on how you're creating those appointments on the schedule, Sonia. So if you are in the customer's profile, we'll see who I have in here. Let's pick on someone. So when you're in the customer's profile, you have this auto invoice section, and this can be set up to invoice monthly. And what happens is, on the date that you pick, all the unpaid invoices since the previous auto invoice will get sent to the customer. So when you set this up, and if you're going out every other week, or you're only going out once a month, those invoices, all of those invoices on those completed jobs will then send if you set up this auto invoicing. So this would be the best way to go about that.
So, uh, it wouldn't be because if you're auto invoicing that's not automatically paying the invoice, right?
The auto pay and the auto invoice are not connected. So there wouldn't be a way, the only way you could auto pay an
Mhm.
invoice monthly, and we run across this a lot in onboarding, is especially with landscaping and cleaners, is if you're only putting the money due on that last invoice of the month. or the first invoice of the month, however you collect. But
Mhm.
keeping that one invoice as kind of your journal of work and adding all the money to that one invoice. And then if you had auto pay, when you finish that job, it's gonna auto pay. But if you're just looking to auto invoice to send the invoices to the customer to collect payment, you want to use the auto invoice section in the profile.
So, would you say that the best way to for like cleaning, landscaping, lawn, anything that's recurring, like dog poop scooping, where you're doing like a recurring service, then the best way to automate the entire system there is doing a recurring job, and then can do the auto pay with the card on file and a recurring job, right?
Yes, yep. But so there's, and hopefully this doesn't get too confusing.
Okay.
Basically, what happens, right? So if we're going out once a week to scoop poop, then and we only want to collect one time at the end of the month,
Mm.
I would, I say because I have a brain trust of folks that I work with over here. We typically recommend that those first 3 appointments of the month, you set up on their own reoccurring schedule. And then that last appointment of the month, you set up on its own reoccurring schedule. So it's the only one with that billing information and money on it, so that when that one job at the end of the month that's reoccurring on its own cycle gets closed out, then it gets billed. And the other 3 are just staying at $0 for essentially journal purposes of we went out there and we did this today.
Okay, got you. Sonia, does that make sense to you? It really just depends on your. I will need more help. Okay, it would be helpful for us to know your workflow and what you would like to do with more detail. And then I do have a question here from Ariel, but it's not about card on file. It is about progress invoicing, and it's not specific. So it's just, can you please discuss the progressive invoicing? Um, we do have a recording on progress invoicing that I can send to you, but if you have a specific question about it, definitely let us know. We won't leave you hanging. Sonia,
Yeah,
if you have questions about this workflow, then definitely let us know. That is what we're here to talk about today. If you have a question about it, it's more than likely someone else has a question about it. And then I'm just seeing if we have any questions in the Facebook video, and
I
it looks
also,
like we don't.
okay, I was gonna say, I want to add for Sonia, um, you can chat into the blue chat bubble and request a support call as well, because it sounds like you have a very specific workflow, which is very common in landscaping and monthly maintenance. So don't be afraid to chat in and request a support call so that you can be one-on-one in Zoom. And then that way you can share that information with the onboarding specialist and they can help walk through that workflow with you and break it down.
Yeah, so just to set the proper expectations, if you are requesting a phone call, a lot of the times what will happen is a customer support rep will call you to fully understand your question, and then they will direct that to the appropriate team. So that first phone call is not always going to necessarily be that Zoom call, but
Right.
that person that calls you can then set that up once they understand what it is that you're actually asking for. Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
She got it. She understands. And then,
Perfect.
um, what is like the main difference? I see this a lot of
Mhm.
the service plan, if you have service
Oh,
plan,
yes.
and card on file. Can I use my card on file to pay my service plan and vice versa?
No, and I'm glad you brought that up because you said it in the beginning and it is a big thing that we stress. So if you save card on file in a service plan, it's only for the service plan. And it does say that when the customer enters the card number and when you enter the card number. So if I'm adding a service plan, taking that card, it says this card will be used for future service plan payments. The two are not interchangeable. So yes, you will have to have card on file on the customer's profile for jobs and regular service work. And then you'll also have to have card on file, even if it's the same card in the service plan section for that billing, if you have both things and you need card for both.
The idea with the service plans is just like your Netflix subscription, this is a monthly recurring charge. It's automated, it's automatic just for them to be a member and have that benefit of whatever it is that you offer for your service agreements. And then they're totally separate. The way that the invoices look are separate. They're not interconnected at all. You can't copy one to another or export that information. They're completely different. We do have a question.
And
Mauricio.
the card on file in the service plan days before the renewal. The only way you would be able to do that is if you are manually, like you would almost have to take the plan off the person and re-add it, because service plans, kind of like Shayna said, and you may be too young, Shayna, but I always use the example of Ron Popeil and set it and forget it. So if you have your service plan set up to only accept credit cards, then that auto payment happens automatically and you don't have to be in that business all the time. It frees that up for you. And there's also, so if a customer were to call Mauricio and you were in your service plan dashboard, let me share this because it might make more sense. So if I'm in my service plan dashboard up here, here we go. So, and that customer's due for billing here, I can click the card here, but that card on file for the service plans isn't going to auto populate. So if the customer is calling in advance to make a payment, you could enter it here, but notice it says this card is going to be saved for future payments. So there's no way to like select that card and charge it early.
Yeah, and it really just depends on how do you have your plan set up. Is it every 6 months? Is it monthly? Is it cash? Is it card? Um,
Yeah.
but can you update that card? So say you wanted to update the credit card, you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So just by, if you're here in the past due billing, you can click that card and update it here. You can update it. The customer is also going to have their customer portal link to their service plan where they can update that card as well.
That's right. They have the customer portal.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend turning on customer portal. And does anybody else have any questions about saving a card on file? Give it a second. And then also, um, I've seen before people asking, how can I tell if a payment was taken, in this way or that way? Was it a check? Was it cash? Was it card on file? There is a way to see that inside of your My Money, but there's now they've added an invoices report for you to be able to see the payment type in your reporting tab and invoices so that you have more clarity about how that payment was taken. And maybe Andrea, you can give us a little more detail, but I am pretty sure that you have to export that information to see it.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is under the reporting tab. It's actually the payments section. So when you go to your reporting tab and payments, you'll notice that it only gives you a date range. So you put the date range in and then you export it and it will email you and you will see like all your credit card fees. You'll see if it was paid check, cash, card, how it was paid. And I did have a conversation recently with the product team about that report. And it sounds like there's no guarantee on date, but eventually in the future, it'll look similar to what other reports are where you can see the graph and everything, and you won't have to export it to get that information if you're someone who just likes to see it on the screen and doesn't
Right.
want to export it. It sounds like that's coming in the future. So for now, you can
Awesome.
export it, and there's a lot of data on that payments page if you haven't looked at that.
Yes, and that is something that is I am not 100% sure when it came out, but I know it was recent, and so it's definitely new.
Mhm.
Um, just FYI for everybody here, and you can tell your friends too.
Yep.
Well, if nobody else has any questions, then we'll wrap it up here. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining Pro Power Hour. We will see you guys next Thursday. If you want to see previous episodes, you can go to YouTube. Housecall Pro has a YouTube page. We have a podcast. We have other previous episodes. There's tons of coaching, inspirational content, educational material. Please check it out. And you can also see it inside of the Help Center. If you search for Pro Power Hour, then all of the previous recordings will come up. Thanks,
Yep.
everybody. Thank you, Andrea. We appreciate
You're
you.
welcome.
Bye now.
Absolutely. Bye.